Hello and welcome to the Inner Codes of the Beautiful. We have begun our journey to understand some of the legendary mantras that have come to become shimmering milestones in this ancient Indian spiritual tradition. And among these legendary mantras, the Gayathri Mantra is a particularly special mantra. The Gayathri Mantra is said to capture the dazzling power of the sun. Hence, the Gayathri Mantra is the giver of light, clarity, creativity and positivity. The Puranas mention that the Gayathri Mantra was fully realized only by very few individuals. In fact, it specifically mentions that there are only 24 rishis who have ever been able to fully realize the potential of the Gayathri Mantra. The very first one was Brahma Rishi Vishwamitra, who in fact gave us the Gayathri Mantra. And the last of these rishis was the Rishi Yajnavalkya in the 8th century CE. The Gayathri Mantra finds mention in the most ancient core of the Rig Veda, from the third mandala of the Rig Veda, and conservatively it's been dated to about 1400 BC, but tradition points to an earlier provenance about 3000 BC. So it's about 5000 years, if not much older. And tradition also credits Brahma Rishi Vishwamitra as the giver of the Gayathri Mantra. But there's a very interesting story to how Brahma Rishi Vishwamitra eventually gave us the Gayathri Mantra. Vishwamitra was at that time the prince of the Bharatas or the Kaushikas. He was known as Vishwarath. And Prince Vishwarath was once on a campaign, a military campaign, and he happens to visit Brahma Rishi Vashishta in his ashram. And when he visits Brahma Rishi Vashishta, the Rishi Vashishta hosts not only Vishwarath but also his entire army. And obviously Vishwarath is a bit wonderstruck as to how in a humble ashram a Rishi would be able to provide lunch, for instance, to such a large army. But to his wonder, he sees that the Rishi has a wish-fulfilling cow, Kamadhenu. And through Kamadhenu, the Rishi is able to provide for the entire army. Now, Vishwarath is enamored by Kamadhenu and he wants to possess Kamadhenu. So, he justifies saying that the king has better use for Kamadhenu than a Rishi in an ashram. But of course, the Rishi Vashishta refuses to part with Kamadhenu. And then, of course, Vishwarath uses force. And when he uses force, upon the Rishi Vashishta permitting, Kamadhenu unleashes a whole army to fight Vishwarath's army and neutralizes them. It is then that Vishwarath realizes that spiritual power is probably the ultimate power, far more than physical power. And he decides to become a Brahma Rishi himself. So, Vishwarath goes and performs a lot of penances, and he becomes a Raja Rishi, but he's not happy. He wants to be a Brahma Rishi. Again, he becomes a Maharishi. Still, he's not a Brahma Rishi. So he keeps going, and many times he goes through a lot of turbulence and failures, and then eventually Lord Brahma appears and grants him the title of a Brahma Rishi. And it so happens that when a rishi meets another person, if the other person is not one's equal, the other person is usually blessed. But if it's one's own equal, the rishi would embrace. So when Vishwamitra, having achieved the title of Brahma Rishi, goes to meet Brahma Rishi Vashishta, Brahma Rishi Vashishta again blesses him. This, of course, infuriates Vishwamitra, but then he walks away dejected. When he walks away dejected, he overhears the conversation between Brahmarishi Vashishta and his wife. So when his wife asks Brahmarishi Vashishta as to why he refuses to acknowledge Vishwamitra's spiritual power as a Brahmarishi, Vashishta mentions that he still has a bit of pride left in him, and only when he conquers that, he would truly be a Brahmarishi. Vishwamitra at that moment realizes his folly, and then he goes back to Brahmarishi Vashishta to fall at his feet. And it is then that Brahmarishi Vashishta accepts him and he embraces him. And in that moment, when Brahmarishi Vashishta embraces Vishwamitra as a Brahmarishi, Vishwamitra spontaneously bursts forth with the Gayathri Mantra. And it is that mantra that has come to us as the giver of divine knowledge, the one that illumines our inner self. And Brahmarishi Vishwamitra also gives it to his Ashura wife Ugra, so that she is illumined with divine knowledge. Om Tat Savitvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. This is the form of the Gayatri found in the Rig Veda. The question is, what makes the Gayatri Mantra so special? The Gayatri Mantra invokes the power of Surya as Savitur or Savitur Aditya. And Savitur Aditya is in the form of the creator Brahma. Savitur Aditya is also called as Dhata, and there's a reason for it. And just like Brahma, he gives us the abilities to envision and create, but not just that. Just like Brahma is the Vidhatar, Savitur Aditya also gives us the power to shape our own fates. That is the power of Gayatri Mantra. Now the question is, how does it work? Dhata Aditya also has a suggestion or a connotation with Dhi, or Dhi being holistic intelligence. Now, what would holistic intelligence mean? Holistic intelligence here would mean not merely your intellect, but it also has connotations with your mind, with the level of your consciousness, and also that taps into the power of your subconsciousness. Now, all put together, the composite is your Dhi Shakti. Now, how does it work? When one applies the Dhi Shakti in an enabling way, one has what we call as the intelligence of Buddhi, which is intelligence and the power to create. And when one applies Buddhi in a constructive way and has the purity of application of this intelligence, then it is called as Shuddhi, purity of applied intelligence. When one has both Buddhi and Shuddhi, it naturally comes to play that one would also have the growth, and that's a Vriddhi. Now, when one has Buddhi and has acquired a certain level of purity in the way the intelligence is applied and one has the growth, then it's only a matter of time before one has accomplishments and success. And this is what manifests as siddhis. And some of these siddhis can even be almost very difficult to explain and magical. All of this is a function of one's application of this holistic intelligence or Dhi Shakti. And this Dhi Shakti is the blessing of Dhata Aditya or Savitur. And Savitur Aditya's blessings are invoked through the Gayatri Mantra. Now that we understand that the Gayatri Mantra essentially invokes the power of Savitur or the sun, then the question naturally is, why would we refer to the mantra as Gayatri Mantra? And what is the Gayatri here? Gayatri here refers to the Chandas. Chandas is a Vedic meter, and Chandas is also one of the 6 Vedangas or limbs of the Vedas. An understanding or the knowledge of the Chandas is required to fully understand the Vedas. There are 7 major Chandas or Vedic meters. Vedic meters are essentially rhythms that are naturally found in nature or the universe. And the 7 major Chandas would include Gayatri, Pankti, Jagati, Trishtubh, Anushtabh, Pankti, and Ushni. So, among these 7 Chandas, Gayatri is in fact the shortest of the Chandas, but it's also considered the most sacred of all of these 7 Chandas. Now, the question is, what connection does this have with the Gayatri Mantra? In the Rig Veda, there is a suggestion that Mahavishnu as Narayana is at the heart of the sun. It says, Dheye Sada Savitra Mandala Madhyavarti Narayana. Narayana resides at the heart of the sun eternally. And how does he reside? He resides as the Sukshma Hora. Sukshma is subtle, secret. He resides as the Sukshma Hora in the heart of the sun. The sun is the one who punctuates time, the days and nights, the seasons, the months and the years. And right at the heart of the sun is Narayana as the Sukshma Hora. And there are 24 horas that make up a day. Now, Narayana or Vishnu in this case as Trivikrama moves in the Gayatri Chandas. In 3 steps he covers the 3 worlds in Vamanavatara. So Trivikrama moves in Gayatri Chandas. That's his natural rhythm. And if there are 24 horas that make up a day, then we know that 8 into 3 gives us the 24. And that is precisely the structure of the Gayatri Mantra. There are 24 syllables that make up the Gayatri Mantra. So then the question is, should we then just simply call it as Gayatri Mantra? The answer would be, we should refer to it as the Savitra Gayatri Mantra, because there are many more mantras in the Gayatri Chandas. Why does the Gayatri Mantra become so important, particularly in the times that we are living in? The Gayatri Mantra draws from the power of the eternal powerhouse, the sun. And when we say something is eternal, then it is also what is true, because truth is whatever is eternal. And when the Dhi is illumined by the power of this eternal powerhouse, the sun, then it illumines our intelligence. It also gives us a clear sense of perception. And when one has this illumined intelligence and a clear sense of perception, the path ahead is lit. And when one has a path that is lit, one has a clear sense of vision, a clear sense of direction, clear sense of purpose, and stemming from all of this is hope and positivity. On the contrary, when one's intelligence is not illumined, the path ahead becomes like walking in a forest on a dark night. There's fear and confusion. And from this fear and confusion, there's a sense of hopelessness, which eventually leads one to get depressed. On the contrary, when the path ahead is lit, there is clarity, there's direction, there's purpose, there's hope and positivity. One can have an understanding of the cosmology from the various Shastras and the Puranas. The Puranas tell us that there are many worlds and there is an ordered hierarchy of these worlds. There are lokas, there are thalas, and then there are narakas. The lokas are at the high level, and the thalas are below the lokas, and below the thalas are the narakas. We understand that there are 7 lokas, and then the 7 thalas and 28 narakas. Now, as the jivatma or the individual soul evolves, its level of consciousness also keeps evolving. And of course, it has the different experiences in the various worlds. Now, in order to ensure that there is a consistent upward ascent of the level of consciousness, there also needs to be a certain level of spiritual momentum that the jivatma has to manage. If not, the jivatma then again regresses down the various worlds. So we are, for instance, in the Bhuloka. Bhuloka is also called Mrityuloka because the beings here experience birth and death. Now, once a being is in the Bhuloka, it is not guaranteed that there is always an upward ascent. One can always regress back into the thalas. So in order to ensure that we do not regress, and in order to ensure that we do not regress beyond a point, one resorts to the Gayathri Mantra. And what one does is one ensures that one gets past the 3 lokas, the Bhuloka, the Bhuvarloka, and the Svargaloka. The Bhuloka, like I mentioned, is the world that we live in. The Bhuvarloka is the solar system. The Svargaloka is manifest universe, which is all the constellations and stars and so on that we see. Now, beyond that is the unmanifest universe, and those other 4 lokas are the Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, and finally the Satyaloka, sometimes also referred to as Vaikuntham. So, the Gayatri Mantra is worshipped with certain vectors, which gives us the spiritual momentum to get to a point where we don't slide below again. It's a bit like not sliding down a slippery slope and getting to even ground. And that vector is through the knowledge of Mantra Shastra. It's by using vectors which are called as samputas. The mantras are essentially made up of bijaksharas, or sound seeds. The rishis had a very deep knowledge of these bijas, of bijaksharas, of mantras, and they also had the ability to work with the various bijaksharas to create many mantras for the benefit of mankind. And this was given to us as the Mantra Shastra. And a very important part of it is also the use of samputas. Now, the Gayatri Mantra is also infused with the samputas in order for one to get past the 3 worlds, the Bhuloka, the Bhuvarloka, and the Svargaloka. So essentially, what one is seeking here is the knowledge of the Brahman. And also by implication, what it means is one is choosing to let go of worldly or material benefits and goals. Hence, the use of Samputa in the Gayatri Mantra is not meant for everyone, because it requires a certain spiritual commitment and discipline. Also, the Gayatri Mantra with the Samputa cannot be frivolously done or taken up oneself. It has to be given by a guru, and a guru who has a spiritual maturity and a certain level of consciousness in order for him or her to give the mantra to another. Otherwise, it's going to be quite like a check which is probably not signed, or it becomes like a check, even when it's signed, it bounces in the bank. The guru should have the spiritual power in order to give a mantra, diksha, to another person or a disciple. And the samputa for the Gayatri Mantra, in order to go beyond these three lokas, and in order to have a knowledge of the Brahman, changes or alters the Gayatri Mantra in such a fashion. Om Bhur Bhuvasva Tat Savitvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. The sun is the eternal timekeeper. We now understand that he punctuates the days and nights, the seasons and the years. He is the giver of rhythm. He also punctuates the day with various time junctions, the sunrise, the midday, the sunset, and the midnight. And the Savitra Gayatri, being the mantra that invokes the power of sun, also has its own significance when chanted in the various time junctions or sandhyas. Chanting of the Gayatri Mantra in the Brahma Sandhya of sunrise gives good health, long life, and intelligence. Chanting of the Gayatri during the midday or the Vishnu Sandhya has an association with Raja Yoga, accomplishments, and success. Chanting of the Gayatri Mantra at sunset or the Mahesha Sandhya has an association with Lord Shiva, gives one progeny and continuation of lineage and learning. And chanting of the Gayatri Mantra at midnight, which is a secret hour associated with Mahakali, the Kali Sandhya, gives one moksha. Now that we understand the power of Gayatri Mantra and how it has the power to take us out of our mundane existence and realm into the realm of the divine. In fact, Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says, Gayatri Chandasam Aham. He says, I am Gayatri, the Chandas, the form of, as far as the Chandas is concerned, he is in the form of Gayatri. So it has the power to give us the knowledge of the Supreme Being. And Brahma Rishi Vishwamitra, when he gave us out of deep compassion, out of his deep insight into the divine. And he gave it for all of mankind. After all, as his name suggests, he is Vishwamitra, friend of the world. I hope you found this episode insightful and meaningful. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next week on another legendary mantra. Take care.